All right, we're going to start with video 3 here, right? So exporting our textures once we're done doing everything, right? So for like the first one, I'm going to show you this. I've already actually exported my block 2, block 3 in a 2 Unreal folder, was Unreal with tiling, texturing with our block there. So these are all the assets we'll eventually bring to Unreal. This is where I will be exporting this set of blocks now. I've also, as I've been exporting, right, I've been changing the name of the texture sets, which I'm going to show why it's important here in the export settings. So we to go File, Export Textures, right? Main settings here is making sure we pick our folder. So I'd select my folder like this, and then there after navigating to it, right? Then up here we have the ability to choose what we're exporting as, right? In our case, we want Unreal Packed, right? Next up is the file type. Now, typically we're going to pick between PNG and Targa if we're going to a game engine. And then you can see that I have the texture set selected over here, right? I can click on it and we can see we have individual things that we can choose, right? So we've got color, all the different settings that we can turn off, what type it is, as well as the actual texture settings, right? So we can do, currently what we're working at, we can make it 4K, 1K, 8K, right? Whatever we want to export it as, right? I'm going to leave it on 2K. No reason to go over that. So I'm going to go back up to the common settings. Now, a little about the Unreal Engine packet template. We'll take a quick look at that. If I go over here to the Unreal Engine packed, right, we've got the different textures that are going to come out here. Now, we're only going to get 3 since we don't have a missive, right? So you can kind of see actually the naming here. So we've got this here is your normal. This one here is the ARM pack map, right? So this is going to be the ORM for short. They have it actually spelled out the long way here, right? In fact, we can even take a look at the names over here, right? So these got called block _ block 3, which is because I changed the naming up here by just double clicking, right? In fact, I'll show that in a minute, but after we get out of there, but then it also has the underscore, then what it is, base color, normal, or occlusion, roughness, metallic, right? Those are actually the pack set here, right? So you can see the occlusion, metallic, and then so forth. But the main idea here is if we hover over each of these, we can see what they are, right? So if I hover over, there we go. See how it's a mixed AO, it's a grayscale map, right? Then you have roughness, grayscale as well, metallic grayscale. Then that was this is our packed map, right? And then obviously at the beginning here, it has like the S and then the mesh to represent, say, make sure you name it after the mesh, and then underscore S textures sets, that'll give it the name of the texture set, so forth, right? If I were to want to have different naming conventions, I could make a copy and change these. In fact, we'll do a quick we'll make a copy, right? So right, I could make a copy here where it only tells me the texture set. So if I wanted to do that, I would get rid of the underscore S, right? And then that way it would only be that. Then I can make my pack map also be a little, oops, I got rid of the S there. I could go change the ORM or the ambient occlusion roughness to ORM in caps like that, so that way it's a little bit smaller, right? Then so forth. But I'm going to use the other pack map, but I'm just showing you that you can change these to be a little less depending on what you need to, right? So I'm just going to get rid of this one here as well. Oops. There. So this would only be the texture set name, right? And then the underscore abbreviation, and then whatever we want it to be, right? Now, the diffuse, right, has obviously the base color RGB, and then the A has the opacity if you were to have some form of transparent. Now, normals takes in the DirectX normals, right? So you can see over here, right, that we've got them all kind of base color, metallic, emissive, roughness, opacity, DirectX normals, since again Unreal uses DirectX and the mix AO, right? This here would be your DirectX normals, and then emissive RGB is its own map. Now, we don't have any emissive on this one, so I'm not worried too much about it. But as you can see, I have a copy of pack now. I typically might, usually copy this and then change up the ORM to an RMA for roughness going to the R, metal going to G, and then ambient occlusion going to B, right? Again, depends on where you're working, will depend on the way you want to pack your maps for things. So we're just going to go back here and hit the export. And it's going to run its thing. And then you'll see that we've got these guys here, right? So those are the block ones. Now that I've exported them once, I can close this. I can double click up here anytime to rename it. So then I would rename it, when you're in your new other block project, right? For one of the 10, right? That you've baked. And then that way, then you can easily make sure that they export. And that way, it also won't have conflicting names when you bring them into Unreal. Now, I've made a very basic project, right? So in Unreal, so I'll just bring over the launcher really quick. And then we'll just create a quick level. That way, we're not in the open world itself. Right, so I come over here, new project. Then I would go to blank. Then I would name your project, right? Whatever you want, your name, and so forth. Set your directory. Leave it on Blueprint, C++, and hit the word create. I'm not going to hit create since I already have one ready for us. Now, let's see here, right? So, start us off, we're going to go File, New Level, just to get us into a basic level. That way we don't have too much, and then we can use that. Now, viewport controls, very similar to you've got your Alt 3 mouse clicks, right? Alt left to orbit, Alt right click to zoom, mouse wheel to pan, but you can also hold down the right mouse button and use the WASD keys, as well as E to go up, R or Q to go down, just like you were playing an FPS shooter, right? For the viewport here. In our case, we're only going to be looking at creating materials and dragging things in, right? So what we got details over here. This is currently everything in our scene, right? If anything, I'd probably, make a smaller cube or something. Actually, we'll take a look at the place actor here really quick. So place cube, right? Nice little white cube. I can hit the N key to make sure it's on the floor here. But this white cube is what I'm going to use to put our blocks on to kind of render them out. Player start doesn't really matter. It can just chill there, right? And then you guys can decorate your scenes all you want. I'm just going to like this. Just so I'm hitting, so again, W is the move tool, right? E is the rotate tool, which I haven't used. The R is the scale tool. So what I've been doing here is you can see I've been playing with the scale numbers on the side here when I've just been clicking these on their respective axes for any 3D objects, right? So you have the Z, the X, and then the Y, right? And right, that way it's there. This is where I will eventually put our block. So I'm going to create a new folder inside our content browser. So you hit Control Space to get this. This is where we're going to throw all our textures and everything. Right. So if I were to right click, go to new folder, I can make a mesh folder. Mesh. And then we'll open this up. And then I'm going to grab that to Unreal folder that I had, right? That's a different one. I want, let's see here. There it is. This one, right? So what I can do here is drag in this here. And then we're just going to scroll down, right? So these are the default import settings. I can hit OK. if I wanted to, since these are typically there, right? In my case, I'm going to come down here. I like to always turn off under the material sections. So if we scroll down a little further, like I like to usually turn off import material, right? Because we're going to make our own. So I'm going to do that, right? Then I'm going to create a folder here for textures. Textures. I'm also going to make a map folder. So right click on the content, new folder, map, because you may as well also save this, right? So we hit that, click on our map here. We'll say block display, right? There we go. And then I'm going to show you by dragging out our block now. Right now it's going to look black. I'm going to scale it up a little by like 4 just so that it's a little bigger, right? Oops, make sure you scale it evenly, right? Oh, hit F. The hell? You know what? I'm going to turn off snapping because that's what's giving me the problem here. There we go. And then I hit end. And then if I hit F, we can focus in on it. Now we are getting camera clipping by being too close. But that's okay, right? We're going to eventually duplicate this guy around, right? Oops. If I were to duplicate him around, right? So we'd want to eventually have 10 blocks. However you want to do it, right? Using your rotate tool, rotate them, give them a little bit, but you want to be able to see the faces. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll go. There. So, you can use the right mouse button and your mouse wheel to control how fast. You'll see that up here my camera speed gets different as I roll the mouse wheel, right? Which then I can get a better angle, right? And then we're just going to keep duplicating. I'll rotate this guy a little. I'll drag out another one. So that's, see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I could do something like this. And could put there. Just like that. All right. And then we can also use the end key to make sure that these guys are sitting exactly on top of the other guys, right? And we push this back some just to make it look a little better. There, right? You can arrange them whichever way you want, right? And then just get a good shot like this. This will be where I want my camera in the long run. But anyway, we're going to hop over here, right click again and make another new folder, call it materials, materials, right? Oops. Materials. Oh, caps lock's on, that's why. Materials. I'm just going to call it mat for right now, then hit F this, F2, materials, right? Didn't like me renaming it the exact same thing, right? Then I am going to create a new material. So right clicking, going up to the material here, call this blocks, right? So stands for master material. And then we'll make this blocks because it's going to be the plural, right? Now, under textures, what we need to do is grab the folder again with our textures. I'm going to grab all 3 of these, right? You're going to have 10 in the long run, right? Now, we do need to come along here and select these guys. Now, I'm going to do it individually. So for the first one, right? So we double click on it, right? The mask maps, the ORMs, or the ambient occlusion roughness metallic, right? We need to come in here and change the compression settings from default to masked, right? What it does is it turns off the sRGB, right? Because again, we're only using grayscale information from these guys, and you're gonna want, that way everything will appear properly, right? So you can do that bulkily once you have all your assets as well by right-clicking, go to Asset Actions, and we can actually go to Edit Selection in Property Matrix, right? And then we just need to go to Compression Type here, and we go from the default to Mask RGB, and then you hit the Save. That way you do all them at the same time, and you don't have to do them all at once, right? While we're here, actually, you go Edit Project Settings, right? I have mine already at the top here. We're gonna go Maps and Modes and set we're gonna make sure that we don't show engine content, so that way we can just plug in block display for both of them, right? This will just mean when you start up the engine for the editor, and for whatever reason, if you ever build it, it would be there, right? Now that we've got the textures, I'm going to go back to our material folder, double click on this guy. We'll drag this guy over here. Oops. So I'm going to delete that or close that, right? So this is the default material editor, right? So as you can see, we have the very standard physically based rendering material, right? We've got base color, we've got metallic, specular, roughness, anistrophy, emissive, normal, right? And then a few other things that we could use depending on what you're aiming for. In our case, we are going to create a generic master material that allows us to swap in and out our textures, right? So if I go to our textures here and I want to grab the first block, right? So these ones, I'm going to grab the first three, right? Drag and drop them in here, right? Like this. Now, there's multiple ways you can select one. So let's just grab the ORM over here, left click and drag. I'm going to delete it, right? If I were to select it, I can hold down the letter T and left click, and it'll do it that way as long as I had it selected in the content browser, which I'm just hitting Control Spacebar. Any window brings it up the content browser, right? And you'll see that it is already set to mask there. Now, to move around the viewport, mouse wheel, Alt, our right mouse click and drag is, by itself will allow you to pan around, right? We get a nice preview. So as you can kind of see, if I actually were to put this on, we don't have a static mesh selected. So if I wanted to come back here really quickly, I could go to meshes. I could see what it looks like if I... Oh, it's just small. All right. There. Probably better that way. Anyway, that's how you can choose. So you select your mesh and then you click the little brick. Then you'll have to hit F because you're super small. Again, it's a block, right? If you have them bigger, in comparison to Manny, it definitely wouldn't be that size. Now, the RGB we want to plug into the base color, so it's a node based, right? So we've got in our out nodes, right, and in nodes, right? So the first one is by obviously a combination of the RGB channels, right? The same would go for our normal, right? So the normal, make sure we plug that in there, and then for this guy here, right, we can then go, so R is the ambient occlusion, B is the metalness. Now roughness, I'm going to do a little bit so that we can control the roughness as well, right, with our other things, right? But we're also going to add in the functionality for eventually later, right, to show how you can tile. So what I would do is hold down the letter T, or not T, I believe it is U. Yeah, U gives you texture coordinates, right? Now, I can hold down the letter M to get a multiply, right? Then this will allow me to actually hold down the letter S to get what's known as a scalar parameter, which is the same as hitting 1 and right clicking and converting that to parameter, right? So the and then it's a single value, right? And this will be the tiling. And I'm going to make sure I set this to 1 by default. That way, because again, these guys you wouldn't tile, but eventually if you were to use it to bring in like a texture off of a plane, then you could easily tile something, right? I'm also going to hold down the L because I'm going to use my roughness as a mask. The reason why is because I'm going to hold down S as well. So we're going to say min roughness. Right? Min roughness, right? Yeah, didn't spell roughness right. Try that again. There we go. All right, so min roughness I'm going to leave at 0, but I'm going to duplicate this. Now, be careful if you don't rename it first. So I'm going to show you what happens. Right, I'm going to actually change it, right? So see how that one changed for me, right? That isn't ideally what we want, right? So I'm going to set that back to 0. Then I'm going to come over here, hit F2 to rename it, and type max, right? What I'm doing here is, except for I want to go back here and make sure that this is capital max. There we go, 1, right? So what this will allow me to do is basically control the min and max roughness by clamping it, right? So what we've done is we've basically created our own little bit of a levels for it, and we plug that in there, right? And then I'm going to apply and save, right? So now you can left click and drag from a thing to till you get a checkbox to drag things in. You can alt click to disable cards if you've been messing up or unplugging things differently, right? So then I'm going to save there, right? Well, that's fine and all for our first texture, Mike, but how do we get the other ones? Well, first off, I'm going to right click and create a material instance. Now, this will be mi underscore block, and we'll call it 1, block 1, right? I'm going to double click this. Now, I forgot to do something in our master material, but we'll take a look at that in a second. Obviously, I have the tiling and the min-max roughness that I could play with, right? Well, what happens if I were to go back to the master really quickly? Because I forgot to right click on these and convert these to texture parameters. Convert to parameter, right? This is going to be in normal text, right? So normal. No, oops, caps lock is on. Normal underscore txt. All right. And then we can also do these ones as well. Convert this to a parameter. This is the ORM underscore txt. All right. And then if we convert this one to a parameter, this will be the base color txt, right? All right. So if I now go back over here, well, we can see under parameters, actually I have to make sure I apply and save. And if I hop back here, we have global texture parameters, right? So this is how we're going. We don't need to make a new master material like this every time, right? I can now just swap out these textures, right? So if I wanted to, I could apply block 1 to this guy, right? Then if I were to, oops, no, I want to apply this one, right? Then just to, that way you can kind of also see if I were to drag this off to the side, right? We'll get this resized really quickly here for you guys. Doesn't really matter about the cube there, but the main idea here is that we have the options on the side here for the material, right? If I check this here, right, we can see that if I play with the roughness, it changes on the side there, right? Especially if I go above 1, it starts to make it more slippery, right? If I change this, the min, right, then it'll change it a little less shiny depending on how much I have it there, right? So it allows us to a little finer control. I wish I set that edge to a soft edge in Maya, but that's a side note. All right, so got our first one, right? Well, we just come back here, create ourselves another instance, right? Another mi. This can be block, and then we can do 2. Right. I'm gonna apply that here, right? And then I just have to open up this guy, and then we just go turn these on. Control space to get our here, go over to our textures, drag and drop them. And then we have block 2. Oop, did I do that to both? 1 second here. Materials. Oh, I accidentally applied it to 2, right? Then I'm going to create another instance here. This will be mi underscore block 3, right? And then I can then come back here really quickly. I'll just apply it to that one, right? Looks the same currently, but then I come along here, my textures, and I plug these guys in, just like that. Right, and then obviously I would do that for the remainder of my 10 blocks till I get a nice little section, and then I would come up here to something like this, get a nice angle maybe, use Control L to change the sun direction depending on what you need, right, to give a bit different sunlight, right? I can even technically face this and use my controls this way, right, to get a nice little section like that, right? And then worst case scenario, if you needed to, you don't like the white, the bottom, right? Well, we can always quickly show you under here, right? I can click the word fab, right? This is like a area where we can go for materials, right? We can do wood. And then I can be like, well, I like a free thing, right? And then I've already got a few here, but I'm going to choose this. Probably look good for like a floor or a tabletop, right? So I could be like add to project, right? Medium quality. And then just close the fab, right? And I'll drag the content browser it opened over just because then it's easier. I just drag this material, put it down here. And the scale of the bottom floor is actually pretty, or block is pretty nice. I can actually open up this thing and be like, see here under global. Perfect. They do have tiling. So I could set this up to 2, right? So if I were to, that way the scale of the other thing doesn't matter too much, right? I can even do 4, right? And there, maybe, no, we'll do 6. There, that looks all right, right? Worst case scenario, I come back to this block here and then look at the scales, right? I can do probably 1 for the Z, but I do want to change this to probably, I'm going to do 12 by 12 to make sure it's nice and square, so that way the texture will appear more proper on the floor, right? If you wanted to, you could put up walls and things like that. Now I do need to come in here and grab all these guys. So I'm just shift clicking to select them all, hit the end. Oop, no, I'll do the bottom row at once. If I do end, do one at a time. Right, so well, I'm just going to grab them over here all at the same time. So apparently, when I changed the scale there, it changed how far they were from the ground, right? And then I would get a nice angle, right? Now, let's see here. Under perspective. See here, yes. So we have high resolution screenshot, right? You would just do under the perspective thing there, and you'd say capture, right? Now, obviously, try to get your blocks a little better aimed in here. And oh, that happened too fast. But you can see that we get a nice render. That is what you'll be submitting to TC Learn there. Right? Oops. I'm gonna hit F on the middle guy here. Worst case scenario, you could also just grab them all. Control G. And then scale them up. Why not? As long as you scale them uniformly, you'll be fine. Then we can get best. Yeah. I'll shrink that back down. There. There. And then once you're happy with it, after you apply all the other materials, then you can grab yourself a nice screenshot to after you position your camera, and then there. And if you want to add doubles of other blocks, as long as I can see all 10, it's perfectly fine. You can even tumble them if you activate physics and things like that. But just play around with it. But otherwise, once you're done, you got your high res shot, and you're laughing. Good luck.